Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'd like to talk about the latest Pax Dei developer letter, where the team discussed several important topics related to the future of the game. Among them were farming, mounts, recycling, crafting bonus buildings, and the upcoming permissions and alliance systems. While reading those announcements, one main thought kept coming back to me. Many of these ideas sound reasonable on paper, but I'm not entirely convinced they're the things the game should be focusing on the most right now. So I'd like to go through these topics one by one. Let's start with fishing. At the moment, fishing doesn't seem particularly important to me. In practice, it's just another resource loop for cooking, and cooking itself is already scheduled for balance changes. Adding new ingredient sources before the core system is properly adjusted could simply make the whole thing more complicated. Farming, however, is a different story. It was announced a long time ago, and introducing it could make life much easier for players who focus on food production. At the same time, I don't think the fact that it hasn't been added yet is necessarily a problem, especially with the upcoming cooking changes. The real issue is that we still don't really know what farming is supposed to be. For example, will players be able to grow cotton, which is crucial for tailoring, or will farming only cover ingredients used in cooking? Will all resources be farmable, or only selected ones? And how will it interact with plots? Will farming require dedicating an entire plot to crops, or will players be able to split a plot between agriculture and buildings? Those questions are still unanswered. Now let's move on to mounts. My concern isn't that a horse that makes you run faster wouldn't be fun. The problem is that, in the current game world, there simply aren't any animals that naturally make sense as mounts. You could imagine riding a goat or maybe even a boar, but in my opinion, new systems should be introduced in a way that doesn't break immersion. What seems more important right now is logistics. Simple transport tools could make a big difference. Things like wheelbarrows or handcarts that increase carrying capacity at the cost of movement speed. Another interesting idea would be the ability to carry a chest instead of wearing a cloak, effectively trading an equipment slot for additional storage space. Ideally, these items should also be visually represented in the world so other players can actually see what someone is doing. Now let's talk about crafting. The developers mentioned a change to the number of crafting attempts. Right now, you can only choose between crafting one item or crafting everything, but the new system will allow more precise control over how many attempts you make. Another idea being discussed is that materials recovered from failed crafting attempts would no longer grant experience when reused. I understand the intention here. The goal is to prevent players from leveling skills by intentionally generating failures. But I see two potential problems. The first one is world consistency. Why would the same resource behave differently simply because it came from a failed crafting attempt? The second issue is trade. If these recovered materials can't be clearly distinguished from normal ones, someone could sell them on the market, and the buyer might only realize later that crafting with them doesn't grant experience. That could easily create confusion in the economy. Speaking of the economy, there's also a broader effect to consider. If failed crafting attempts return some of the materials, players will simply be able to make more crafting attempts with the same amount of resources. And the more attempts there are, the more finished items will eventually enter the market. Over time, that means a larger supply of items, and when supply increases, prices tend to drop. And this brings us to something that I think is still missing: buy orders. Without buy orders, it's difficult to build a functioning economy, because players have no reliable information about actual demand or the real flow of resources. Honestly, I don't quite understand why such an important system still isn't in the game. That said, I'm glad the developers mentioned plans to introduce buy order boards, which should help address this issue. Now let's move on to crafting bonus buildings, because this is where I have my biggest concern. Large clans that build entire cities will have no problem maximizing these bonuses. They'll simply spread different workshop buildings across multiple plots. Small groups, however, may struggle simply because they won't have enough plots, and solo players will likely be forced to choose a single profession they want to optimize and build their entire setup around that one bonus. There's also the issue of rebuilding. Right now, if you want to significantly redesign a plot, it's already quite a complicated logistical task. Without convenient ways to store all the materials used to construct buildings, as well as all the items currently placed on the plot, any large-scale rebuild becomes very difficult. This will affect small clans and solo players the most, because adapting their settlements to new systems will require a lot of manual work. If crafting bonuses are introduced without tools that make rebuilding and material storage easier, it could also unintentionally reduce architectural variety in the game. Instead of designing buildings based on aesthetics or personal style, players will start designing them primarily to maximize crafting bonuses. Finally, let's talk about permissions and alliances. The developers want this system to matter for all types of players, not just PvP-focused groups, but also clans that build villages and cities together. The permission system is supposed to allow different membership levels, each tied to specific roles and privileges. For example, there will be trusted friends with expanded permissions. The goal is to make the system both safer and more forgiving, with clear rules for removing members. This should make it easier to invite new people without risking the loss of property or progress. As for the development timeline, the game is currently rolling out verse 5. This update already includes master crafting, UI improvements, new emotes, and experience rebalancing for the main professions. The goal here is to smooth out progression and make it more accessible. The next stage, verse 6, will focus on building systems, comfort mechanics, and permissions. After that, verse 7 is expected to introduce alliances. In the meantime, the developers also mentioned a few smaller additions. These include a duel system, improvements to cooking and alchemy, combat and PvE adjustments, wild animals connected to fletching, and a few surprises that haven't been revealed yet. Thank you for your time and for watching this video. If you like my content and want me to create more, please give it a thumbs up. A thumbs down is also fine if you don't like it. This way, I'll know whether it's worth making this kind of material. A thumbs up lets me know it's worth spending time on. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and write something in the comments as well. Comments help boost the reach because YouTube sees interest in my videos and suggests them to other people when there are many comments. That's why I'm asking for a comment, to help this video get better viewership. If you have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover in the next video, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestions. I'm looking forward to your opinions and ideas. See you in the next video.